the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun. The sagebrush whispers, the rivers hum. This land's a story just begun. Wyoming calls, where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. Boots hit gravel and the prairie sings with every hoofbeat. The frontier rings from ranchers' hands to miners' veins. The spirit of the West remains. Wyoming calls, where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. So come ride with me through the dust and time. Find the soul of Wyoming beyond the fence line, beyond the fence beyond the fence line, beyond the fence beyond the fence line, where the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun.
Hey, good morning. Happy Thursday, February 12th. Welcome to Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line, where we go outside the echo chambers of politics, maybe partisan ramblings, political grandstanding, and we just talk about what's going on, hopefully from a factual and a truthful basis. And here we are, day 4 of Wyoming's 2026 budget session. I'm affectionately calling these shows Billtopia. Why? Well, because it looks like we've got actually another close to 100 bills still on the docket for consideration. And then, of course, all of the other bills that have been passed and going into different committee sessions and things like that. So yesterday I actually stayed out of the Capitol as I needed to do this pesky thing called work, but I did get to listen to and catch a lot of the legislative session just via my phone or whatever while I was getting some work done. And today I might swing over to the Capitol and hang out for a bit, maybe a little bit this morning at 10 o'clock when the sessions start, things like that. So, what is going on? So, I was thinking about this, and it appears to me that we have to get permission for everything from government. And this whole freedom with permission thing is kind of getting under my skin a little bit because, that's not freedom. That is like the illusion of freedom, right? I mean, that's kind of what that looks like to me, Some bills, just so you guys know what's going on, some bills have gone into the general file now. Some are going into second readings. Some are going into committee work. And believe it or not, they're actually starting to work on some of the budget stuff too, which is great. First week is almost wrapping up in the legislative session, and it's good that they're starting to work on some of the appropriations and some of the budget stuff as well. But I wanted to remind you what kind of governor I will be when it comes to these sorts of things. Let's repeal, replace, optimize, and privatize a lot of this stuff so that you don't have to get permission from government to do things in your daily lives, or just maybe consolidate things and make it simpler, or get government out of it for that matter. We're not doing a whole lot of that. In fact, I'm going to do a little bit of soapbox at the end of the show today, and I'm going to talk about fiscal responsibility. And it's just going to be sort of me jumping on a quick soapbox and thinking about the number of pieces of legislation that we've got going on, and what does that ultimately cost the people? And it'll be interesting to kind of look at that at the end of the show. Obviously, I cannot cover every bill. I'm going to talk today about bills that are interesting to me, bills that I'm glad are continuing, bills that I'm glad that have died, or bills that I sort of have, maybe even some mixed thoughts on and stuff like that. And so let's go into it. Just a quick summary. There's a whole bunch of property tax bills that continue to fail. Some of them are passing through, but they're mostly related to sunsetting. So if the People's Initiative does get approved in November when we vote, because it looks like the legislature is not going to come up with a property tax solution this session. At least that's what it looks like to me. Although there are a whole bunch of new bills coming that may change property taxes. We'll have to see. But anyway, a lot of those are sunset bills so that exemptions go away when the new property tax, the People's Initiative, goes into place. So that's kind of what's going on property taxes. There are some election bills going through, but not very many. Most of them are related to just basic high-level audits or, random audits and hand counts, things like that. There's a whole slew of like 3 or 4 bills to address like the Weston County clerk situation, like false reporting and how do we punish them? What is the crime? Local recalls, things like that. So that's kind of what's going on in the election stuff, and I won't get too deep into that as well. So let's start diving into bills and let's talk about a few of them. So House Bill 8, the stalking of minors crime bill, still going through its various steps and processes. And it's now, I think it's going into its second reading and things like that. So House Bill 8 and 9 are both bills related to criminal offenses when it pertains to kids. These are both common sense bills, I think, making some things in Wyoming actual crimes, actual felonies when you commit these things against children. So I think those bills are very good. I'm glad those bills are continuing. I'm glad that House Bill 32 is continuing. English proficiency, for commercial motor vehicle drivers. David Iverson on his show yesterday brought up a good point about House Bill number 32, and that was this. Why can't we just go straight to the root of the problem or the root of the issue and just make it not legal to be illegal, right? You cannot drive if you are not legally in this country. period. And I think he had a really good point on his show about that yesterday. In fact, on that note, you guys, I am going to be live on the open record tonight with David Iverson. I will post that link below in the comments. I'll be live at 7 o'clock with David Iverson on the open record, and we'll be talking about the legislative session. So keep that in mind. Just as a little sidebar, side note there. House Bill 56. I think this is overall a good bill. Carbon capture mandate repeals, getting rid of these carbon capture mandates and some of this stuff where the technology doesn't even exist, but it's holding back some of Wyoming's core industries. So getting rid of some of that, or yeah, sort of that Biden era ideas and things like this, in order to progress some of our core industries in Wyoming, I think that's a great thing. House Bill 143 made it through the first hurdle yesterday. Free speech for healthcare providers. I think about bills like this, and I find it somewhat unfortunate that bills like this are actually necessary. Like, why do we have to legislate free speech for healthcare providers when we have the First Amendment, right? When we have the First Amendment of the United States? What if we went to the root of this stuff and just said, you know what, we're going to be a First Amendment state here in Wyoming, and we're not, and I understand like the reason and the purpose for a lot of this stuff, but for me, it's like, why do we? It's unfortunate that we have to do this, that we have to go ahead and and do that. It's just I think it's unfortunate that we have to do that, because the bottom line for me is that we should have our free speech, right, you guys? Like, that's what we should have, and so it's interesting, but glad that bill is going through nonetheless. I'm just grabbing this link real quick for the open record where we'll be live tonight at 7 p.m. That is now in the comments. If you guys want to watch that tonight, that's where you can see it. So what else am I happy about that actually went through and passed? There's a whole bunch of other things here. So House Bill 141, this basically is a Fifth Amendment Protection Act for housing, taxation fees, and proper process. This is just making sure that local municipalities can't just tax and fee you to death without following the proper state statutes and procedures, and just making sure they're doing that the right way, and you're just not getting taxed to death on the local level. Obviously, I am very, very much in favor of local control and stuff like that, but there's a lot of things going across this state, with water runoff fees and things like this. And I'm not sure, I don't think this bill actually addresses that particular issue, but just making sure that your local fees and taxes are being done in the right way. SJ05, Convention of the States. This is a resolution, right? Really isn't necessarily law, but that we support the Convention of the States. I also am a big fan of the Convention of the States, folks. I know Wyoming has not officially passed, this is more of a resolution. Wyoming has not officially passed that we're going to join the Convention of the States yet. I hope we actually do that. I actually don't know that there's a bill on this session for that, but we should join that. I think it's now 21 or 22 states that are interested in doing this. This is all about holding the federal government accountable to the people for potentially term limits for Congress, which I've always said, if you had term limits in Congress, you probably eliminate 80% of our problem in Congress. And then, of course, fiscal responsibility at the federal government level. And you guys have probably seen my shows. There's a couple of shows I've done the last couple of weeks where I'm talking about the fiscal irresponsibility going on in Washington right now. I mean, it's just insane. They're spending money on everything. So I appreciate this resolution for the Convention of the States. Maybe we'll see a bill for this. I don't know. I'll keep an eye out for that and let you guys know on that. Another resolution, again, this is a Senate File 09, talking about public lands. This is more of, I think, just our legislature making a political statement, kind of avoiding erroneous sale of public lands, right? Opposing like the broad or large scale sales of federal lands, and supporting keeping public lands accessible, emphasizing multi-use management, calling for strong local and state input before any lands are sold. And again, this is just a resolution, so it's not a law or anything like that. It's just saying that this is what we stand for. This is what the people of Wyoming stand for, and things like that. Now, there's a couple of bills. Another bill died yesterday in the House Bill 131. I wish this bill had actually made it. Another bill attempting to prevent the use of your tax dollars when it comes to government memberships, corporations, lobbyists, associations, all of this. And again, failed miserably, House Bill 131. So this is the second one that we've seen in this vein this session, and they're just failing, you guys. And I think I can see a little bit of the perspective of legislators and government and education on issues and things like this, but this has got to be privatized, you guys. If you want to lobby, you want to be a part of associations and memberships, sure, go for that, but not on the back of taxpayers. By the way, we're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions, and I'll say it again, millions of dollars in taxpayer dollars across this state going towards lobbying, associations, government memberships, both on the state and the local level. So I want to see this go through. I don't think we're going to see anything this session. This is something I would support. It needs to go away. You know what? We've elected our officials to do a job. They should be able to do that job and educate themselves on that job. And if they want to participate in these things, it needs to not be on taxpayer dollars. Another one that failed again, I think this is the second, or a bill, it's the second one similar, House Bill 135, public officials' non-disclosure agreements. Stopping public officials from being able to sign non-disclosure agreements and do backdoor deals also failed. Looks like we still want to be able to do those things and kind of do it behind. And there may be problems with some of these bills, but we could at least talk about them and amend them if we would like to get them done. Here are some interesting bills I'll talk about next. These are bills that either failed or they didn't make it, or I'm mixed about them, right? It's kind of like, what is this for? Is this government overreach? Is this not the role of government? And kind of asking those questions. So Senate File 87, interference with, I'm going to actually pull this up and look this up. I thought this one passed. Oh, you know what? This one did. Senate File 87, this is felony interference with police officers. And this kind of goes to what's going on with the national stage, you guys, where we're not doing the peaceful protest thing, right? We're obstructing law enforcement in the legal duties that they have. Basically, what this bill is, it makes it a felony in this state to obstruct law enforcement in doing their normal legal duties that they have. And so that's what Senate File 87 does. I think this is appropriate. Again, that right in the First Amendment is for peaceful protest. The minute you go outside of that, there should be consequences if you're causing damage to property or obstructing law enforcement and things like that. So I think this is a sensible bill to do that. Interesting bill that failed, House Bill 134, it failed yesterday. This was disclosure of filtered legislator emails. I know this has been a topic. Many of you maybe have emailed your legislators and not heard back. And this is, for me, I'm a kind of a techie, right? And so I understand why normal spam filters would be filtering out a lot of these form letters that we send out to legislators, right? Where 100 people send the exact same message into a system to all the legislators, it would likely get caught in a spam filter. I will say this, I've emailed my representatives countless times in the last year, personal messages, asking questions, asking for action. And I don't get email replies from my legislators. So I don't know if they're not getting my emails or they just don't respond. And I've heard both sides of the story. Many legislators just don't respond. Other legislators aren't getting the emails, but that did fail nonetheless. Um, there is a bunch of bills like this one on the docket, like House Bill 144, where what they're trying to do with this property tax issue is give fire departments and other local municipalities the ability to mill additional levies based on vote on the local level. So voters can vote on taxes for their fire districts, for instance, like House Bill 144. And there are a bunch of bills like this for different purposes on the local level. This is to address, right, the shortfalls of the property tax issue. I would argue that while I think these are good, maybe on their face, good ideas, this isn't a solution in fixing the property tax problem by creating more layers of bureaucracy, more ability to tax, more of this and more of that, without just coming up with a principled solution for property taxes and how do we fund these things. I think creating more complexities in government is something that I would want to try to avoid in general. So there are a bunch of these bills going through that would allow different districts to do their own taxation policies on the local level. And then, of course, voters could vote on that. While it's interesting, I think I'd want to step back and let's actually solve the problem statewide versus creating more taxation, more process, more way. It seems like it makes things more complicated, and I'd rather not do that. A couple of other interesting bills. I thought these were interesting. House Bill 145, which is removing some of the taxation from EV drivers. Um, I know we don't have a ton of electric vehicles in this state. We do have an awful lot of electric vehicles that do drive through this state, where there's multiple layers of taxation on these charging stations and stuff like that. That bill did go through just to kind of clean up some of the tax code related to the electric vehicles. Another one, House Bill 146, was one that kind of frees up some of the regulation and liability related to home solar systems. So essentially, these small solar systems are being guided by a lot of bureaucracy. And the idea here was to lessen that so that people could get their own electricity via solar if we want. And I would go back on both of these bills on just the principle. Like, do we love electric vehicles? Do we love solar power? I think, small solar at home, small wind at home. I think these are private property things. I think that you can do that, enjoy doing that. And so these are small scale projects. But from a principled standpoint, obviously on a large scale, do we want to do these things? And obviously we're having those discussions. And that's probably a different discussion than House Bill 145 and 146. I thought this next bill was interesting. It failed miserably, by the way. It like miserably failed. What they wanted to do in House Bill 37 was make more local offices nonpartisan. Make them focused on resume and skill set and what they bring to the table, for like your county commissioners or your city councils. Make a lot of these positions outside of state government nonpartisan. Make them so that they're really just focused on qualifications. And I think in a perfect world, I would love to see less partisanship, right? I'd like to see more and more and more nonpartisan positions where people are elected based on merit and skill and what they do and what they bring to the table and what their history is. So on premise, I like the idea of less labels, right? If you would. Like I said, this failed miserably. And I think I can understand why. You want to understand where someone politically aligns when you elect them to city council and things like that. But I think it's an interesting idea. I think it merits and warrants discussion. Obviously, it failed. But I just think it's an interesting idea because the more labels that we can pull away from culture, I think the more we could get back to, just truly citizen government. So just a thought, just an idea on that one. Um, Drink a little water here. House Bill 47 failed. This was a duty to act bill. Basically, if you are in the middle of an emergency, that you ought to call 911, or if you think there's a problem, that you ought to call 911, and that you have a duty to act to do so. Now, emergency responders, like as you know, I was a firefighter for 20 years, we have a duty to act. If we see something, we say something, we call 911, we have a duty to act. But most regular folks, I guess most folks not in that sphere, don't have a duty to act in emergencies. And I think what this bill was trying to address was this whole idea that we witnessed something bad. Instead of calling 911, we live stream, right? We get on our camera and we live stream the people beating each other up instead of calling 911. Which if you think about that, it's kind of sad that that's what we do instead of, or even intervening or saving or helping people. We're just going to go on live stream and put that in front of the camera. So this bill did fail, and I understand why. It's like, kind of, how do you enforce something where you're like, well, you didn't call 911, you're now responsible for, let's say this person's death or this situation because you didn't call. And so I can understand why it failed. I thought it was an interesting bill, but obviously probably crosses the line in a lot of ways. So House Bill 137, 139 also failed, and these were interesting to me as well. The idea here was that you would do some additional taxing to gambling to help bridge some of the gap in highway funding. I've been watching a trend, and I'm just going to leave this here for what it's worth. When it comes to gaming and taxation, we tax gaming relatively low in Wyoming, and we continue to expand this industry. And we tax it relatively low, and we don't want to tax it anymore. And I'm really curious as to why. I have a feeling it has to do with money. And I don't know if it has to do with, I would have to dig into this. Is there a lot of money coming from the gaming industry into PACs, into campaign funding? I don't know the answer to that question. So but I'm supposing why we don't want to tax the gaming industry anymore when it is taxed relatively low overall, anyways. So I think that's interesting. Those bills failed. I mean, obviously, if I had it my way, I don't like commercial gaming. I don't think it really supports a healthy culture. And you talk about billions of dollars going to, these gaming corporations and organizations out of Las Vegas instead of going into Wyoming's economy, right? And then that's kind of one way that I look at it. But anyway, if you watch all the gaming bills, you'll notice we're regulating for sure, or even releasing regulation, and we're not really interested in taxing it much more. So anyways, food for thought on that. I thought that was interesting yesterday as well. There were a couple of bills that failed that I feel like these bills are not the role of government anyways, right? So yesterday there was House Bill 74. This was to put feminine products into public schools. I just kind of think not the role of government. That's the role of parents. That's the role of the individual. It's just really kind of not the role of government, right? And then Senate File number 86. You guys hear this one. Wyoming Property Tax Relief Authority. So the idea here was they were going to be able to issue loan. They were going to create a board and issue loans to help people pay for their property taxes. Talk about not addressing the problem, right? In the first place, they were going to make an authority. Senate File 86 was going to make an authority, a board to go ahead and give you loans to pay your property taxes. So there's some weird bills like that where it kind of makes you scratch your head and go, why don't we just fix the property tax problem? Which, again, I'm not sure what we're going to do other than probably see the People's Initiative come up at the end of the year. Uh, with that, that's kind of my bird's eye view of what happened yesterday. Today, I'll probably end up around the Capitol a bit. And like I said, there's like, I think I counted, there's like 86 more bills that haven't been introduced yet. That looks like they'll probably be starting to get introduced today. So we've got hundreds of bills, you guys, coming and going from the floor to various committees and things like this. And hopefully we're going to get into some meaningful budget work here relatively soon, which I think that is starting to happen. So I promised you at the beginning of the show that I was going to get on soapbox for a minute, and I am going to do that. And there's a reason for this. I call it conservative fiscal responsibility. When you look at a lot of these bills, and by the way, if you go to the bills tab, so I posted all the links, you guys, below for like the different legislative pages and stuff. But if you go to the website and then go to legislation, you can actually click on the tabs of these fiscal impacts of these bills, of all this, I guess you could say, in ways, added bureaucracy. What is that going to cost taxpayers? So I want you to know, I just picked a bill to look at, and I want you to know that I'm not picking on this bill necessarily, but I wanted to kind of explain my point. This is Senate File Number 84, which is a voluntary water conservation program. And this is related to, the Colorado River Water Compact and all the things going on there in water conservation. It's a voluntary program. But it's interesting because it adds 2 more state employees, and the cost is going to be about $500,000 for the next 2 years with 2 employees. But now when you step back and zoom out, and again, I'm not picking on the program necessarily, but you step back and you zoom out and you go and look at the fiscal impact of each of the pieces of legislation going through, and you start doing the math, right? And you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, if not more, that we're adding to government, to bureaucracy. Maybe we're hiring more employees. Maybe we're giving out incentives or subsidies. Or maybe we're creating a new board, a paid board or department or organization or things like that. So you have to ask yourself, at what point are we going to keep adding to bureaucracy, especially from a financial standpoint? When we say we're going to be fiscally conservative, unless it's stuff we want, right? Unless it's things we want to add. So that's a little food for thought, just a little soapbox at the end of the show today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Obviously, we got one more legislative day tomorrow on Friday. I'm trying to cover what's going on as much as I can every single day, just to give you guys the interesting information that's coming out of the Capitol. And we'll keep you guys updated as much as I can. Remember, tonight, 7 p.m., I'll be live on the Open Record. I posted that link below, so hopefully you'll join me on that. And I've got an off-the-cuff interview by phone today, this evening as well, and that'll be published online by the person doing that. What else is going on? Big campaign announcements coming up here in a couple of weeks. Anyways, with that, I hope you guys have a great Thursday. Be blessed. Keep praying for rain. We need rain. And God bless you guys. Take care. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, you know what? I'm going to throw on the Code of the West today. So we'll play that as our song going out. Have a good day, guys. Bye now.
Sun comes up on a small town road, coffee in a thermos, steel-toe boots. You don't flinch when the wind blows cold. You just do what you're born to do. Calloused hands on a busted gate. Fix what's broke till it holds its weight. You don't cut corners, don't fake the shine. You see it through every single time. That's the code of the West. Stand tall, give your very best. Your word is the mark on your chest. You ride for your people, you don't forget. Some things you just can't buy, like a clean heart and a clear sky. Know where to draw that line. That's the code of the West. That's the way I ride. You shake a hand, that's an iron deal. Doesn't change with the way you feel. If you say you'll show, you'll be on time. Rain on the roof or a blue sky shine. You wear the name on your paycheck proud. Hold up the crew when the chips fall down. You don't brag big, you just get it done. Few words spoken, but you speak in tongues. That's the code of the West.